Welcome to On Record PR. You are here with Jennifer Simpson Carr and Gina Rubel. Hi, Gina.
Hello.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Jen. In this
um,
frozen tundra that we are living in right now.
it was 5 degrees on my dashboard this morning on
I
my
don't even
drive to
want to
school.
know. I
Sorry.
don't even want to know. Let me look. Hold on. I'm going to look at my phone. Um, we have 16 degrees, sunny, and feels like 0. So
Yeah,
heading to -1 on Friday and Saturday. Looks like fun.
yeah.
Hi,
Something to look
folks.
forward to. And if you're in warmer weather, send it this way.
Yeah, right? Please.
So I'm just getting back from the Thomson Reuters CMBDO forum. And for those of our listeners who may not be familiar with that, it was formerly known as the Marketing Partner Forum, or MPF. And there was an incredible amount of very strategic, high level conversations around what is happening in our industry across the board. But no surprise to us, and probably to many of our listeners, merger activity was one of the most significant topics of conversation. And we've seen throughout 2024 and 2025 mergers, combinations, they've accelerated pretty significantly in the past few years. And industry reports that were presented showed an increase in law firm mergers in 2025 compared to the prior year, including a 21% rise in completed deals in just the first half of 2025. And we also know about several high profile combinations that larger firms have either closed or announced.
And Jen, as you and I have discussed, we don't anticipate a slowdown in 2026 either. In fact, merger activity is expected to remain strong this year. Firms are pursuing consolidations for scale, diversification of their capabilities, talent retention, broader geographic reach, any number of reasons, right? Or at least any number of stated reasons, most of which all come down to revenue. So it's important to be mindful of that. And from the activity we've witnessed, personally, I'm prepared to see a number of multi-office and even transatlantic transactions happening in 2026. I know the industry prefers to call them combinations. So you'll hear us listeners or those of you watching on YouTube or elsewhere, you'll hear us refer to it mergers and acquisitions or combinations, referring to the same thing. Lawyers just really like the term combination.
Mhm. Yes. So, one of the big headlines that was talked about pretty significantly throughout the week, and that's already on everyone's radar, is the merger of Hogan Lovells and Cadwalader. And so, as you mentioned, Gina, revenue, I think, has been a big driver. This deal is expected to create one of the world's largest firms by revenue, with more than 3,000 lawyers and $3.6 billion in revenue when it closes. And for those of you who have, like us, who have been in the legal industry for quite some time, you might remember that Hogan Lovells itself was created in 2010 from the transatlantic merger of US firm Hogan and Hartson with UK's Lovells. So that's a big one. A lot of conversation around that, not only in passing and networking, but also on several of the panels. And we also have seen the recent announcement of Perkins Coie and UK-based Ashurst, which in 2020, November 2025, announced an agreement to merge, forming Ashurst Perkins Coie, which will be a global top 20 firm, again with 3,000 plus lawyers and $2.7 billion in revenue. There are so many mergers we can talk about. They continue to happen, and they're happening at really significant firms, which is showing that it's not really isolated to the mid-market or smaller firms who at one point were trying to survive, maybe, but this is really part of a broader shift we're seeing across the legal sector. So for many firms today, a merger isn't a fallback strategy, as I said, a means to survive. It's a proactive move to compete globally and serve clients more comprehensively.
And Jen, it's not only global. I just do want to mention, so for example, Troutman has merged several times. They took over Pepper Hamilton, which were combined with Pepper Hamilton, which was a Philadelphia firm that I've known my entire life. And now they're talking, I think it was last year that they said that they were going to merge with Lock Lord. I think that's completed. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's happening all over the industry and all over the world. So what we're here to talk about is how the communications should be handled around a merger or a combination, and how the announcements should be handled, how it elevates the firm's brand, it reassures clients and talent, how it positions the firm for long-term growth and stability. Sometimes it's just stability, other times it's growth. But then handled poorly, it can also create a lot of confusion. It can fuel rumors, it erodes trust, and it could even lead to a dissolution. So if lawyers or staff get wind of it and start leaving in droves, that can cause other problems as well. So we really need to share the communications rules that consistently determine whether a merger announcement builds confidence or invites chaos. And I believe you and I earlier talked about 4 key principles that we were going to talk about.
Yeah, so communication is key, as we always say, and let's run through those 4 principles. So, number 1, never announce a merger until the deal is final.
And I think we need to talk about what announce means. So it's important to know who you can and cannot have that conversation with. But to prematurely disclose it can trigger anxiety among your attorneys and staff, client uncertainty, as I said earlier, competitive maneuvering. So there's a lot and there could even be ethical concerns. So it's important to make sure your conflicts are dealt with, that it's really likely going to move forward before anything even internal is discussed. And we tend to recommend strict confidence protocols, strict confidentiality protocols, I should say. DNAs for anyone involved. That includes your staff with access to executive committees' email. So for example, if your administrative assistant or somebody else on the team has access to your emails and you're communicating there, they need to be under the strictest of confidence. And we tend to forget about that. Your outside partners like Fury Rubel, we do this all the time, but we're under strict NDA on every time a client is considering an M&A or a combination. So that's really important. And any of your outside vendors who would be involved. So perhaps you're talking and getting quotes from your web vendor saying, what would it cost to merge our 2 websites? They need to be under strict confidentiality. You also must prepare for a leak. It's not a maybe. It happens every day. So be ready to acknowledge the discussions without confirming details or speculating. And that's really an important piece. That piece of preparation alone can save a deal.
So you bring up a couple of great points that I think are forgotten about in the planning process, and something that can really create discomfort. But the access to emails, access to partner emails that staff might have, vendors or service partners who might be in the mix. So these are considerations to start early on in the process. And as you said, plan for the news to get out. All it takes is for a partner to say something like, oh, something's in the works, right? And there is a hint out into the marketplace that something may be happening at the firm.
If internal alignment is planned well and well in advance of signing the deal, then you can protect your firm's reputation and your firm itself, because your people should never learn about a merger from outside sources. For example, coming from the media, something got leaked to the media, they find out, and you have equity partners who don't even know about it yet. That's a problem. And clarity matters. Is it a true merger? Is it a large scale acquisition? 9 times out of 10, you won't position it that way anyway. If you're in a law firm, you're going to position it as a combination, but you still need to know what it is. Is it a practice group expansion? those distinctions in the mind of the stakeholders affect compensation, leadership, branding, and in particular culture, which sounds like a soft issue, but it's not. Culture matters and people will ask. So leaders need to anticipate those questions and have the answers prepared so that we use a lot of tools, Jennifer, you know this, internal FAQs, leadership talking points, and then sometimes it's just holding statements. You get a call from the media. They say, hey, we hear you're talking to so-and-so. How do you deal with that? So that clear guidance empowers the partners to be ready to speak confidently with clients and with their own internal stakeholders.
So that beautifully summarizes kind of our second step, which is internal alignment, because it's so important that internally you are on the same page about what will be shared, how it will be shared, the timing. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I think what you're getting at is if the internal team understands the reasons, like what we always say, the why behind the conversation or the opportunity, they become your ambassadors and they're the ones who are going to be excited about it. And you want to, as we say, always make it their idea, right? Always get their buy-in first. And that's really important so that they feel safe and that they're speaking properly about the opportunity.
And it's interesting you use the word exciting because, again, going back to messaging, this is an opportunity to really reassure your teams that this is in the best interest of the firm, in the best interest of the future for each of these professionals. And so there's a real opportunity to help your employees and your attorneys and your business professionals become excited about this and avoid it feeling like, why, as you said, Gina, why is this happening? Is something wrong? Is the firm that we're combining with not doing well? Your messaging as leaders of the firm can really help set this up for success. So, Gina, before we dive into our rules number 3 and 4, let's pause here for a message from our sponsor.
Sounds good to me, Jen.
This episode is brought to you by Furia Rubel Communications, a public relations and marketing agency serving law firms and businesses worldwide. With an expert team positioned throughout the U.S. and supported by an international faculty, Furia Rubel enhances our clients' brands through integrated communications by providing expert guidance in crisis management and high-profile litigation, protecting brand and reputation, and supporting internal marketing teams. To learn more, visit furiarubel.com.
We are back from our sponsor message. And Gina, let's talk about rule number 3. This is where we have seen public mergers stumble. We know these announcements are not the end of the deal. It's the beginning for both firms of a new chapter. It doesn't just end the day it happens. And so the messaging that is shared internally and externally should reflect purpose and not just a transaction.
Jennifer, and when I look up, I'm thinking, right? So for those of you watching the video, we have done so many merger communications over the years. And most of the time, the announcement is literally the first step. So, and I'm not going to speak to specific clients out of respect for them and the work we do and our own confidentiality to them. But an example, real world example would be one firm is merging with another firm. It may be smaller, but it may have a significant presence in a particular market. That firm might want to keep some sub branding for a short amount of time and keep their website while the actual merger is taking place. And when I say the actual merger, I mean bringing together your technology, your websites, your teams, all of that stuff. None of that happens overnight. So there may be different messaging there as opposed to an acquiring firm saying, we're taking your firm, we're putting everything in our website, we're going to have it all ready to go the day we announce, which is rare. And then your site's going to go dark. So there are all these little things. We have spreadsheets and lists of things that have to happen. So all of that matters, the visual branding, the name, the logo, the website, the email signatures, the social channels. Every one is those is a touch point for this forward looking story and how it benefits the stakeholders. And then timing matters. And we can't worry about internal IT's convenience and have that trump the brand rollout, especially if it's a new brand. And what a lot of people don't know is that a lot of people leak information. So reporters are watching your website closely to see what's changing, especially if your firm gets a lot of news coverage. So don't hand them the scoop by accident, because then you have to backtrack. And if you're not prepared with those FAQs that we talked about, then you have to be going into risk management. So when branding and messages are unified, it really makes a huge difference, and the market sees intention and stability as opposed to confusion.
Was taking a note here because you bring up such a critical point, which is the collaboration between departments. And this was another big topic of conversation at the conference, but also when we recorded our debrief from the Tech West by Southwest, it was a big part of that discussion.
Mhm.
And having great relationships with other departments not only helps you align, but it also helps you become advocates. So for example, in your example, if IT is running into an issue, if you as the head of communications or marketing have a great relationship and understand the challenges that each other are running into, you can be united front and advocate for changes in process, change in timeline. So I just wanted to point out that
Yeah.
doesn't start when the merger announcement, becomes public internally at least. That is a long-term process of building a relationship and getting to know each other's departments and functions in a meaningful way.
Well, Jen, think about it. Last year we had a client that was going through an M&A, and it was announced internally and not externally. And it was months before we could announce it. And when we finally did announce it, everyone internally had already known about it. And we were very fortunate in that case that it didn't get leaked. However, that happens to be a client that has such a buttoned up culture. It's pretty amazing. So it's just interesting how things play out. And that was in that particular instance, there was one thing holding it up, and it was a serious potential conflict which got resolved. But again, that's something that they had to deal with internally, and that takes time. So I find it fascinating, as with anything, when you have a plan on how to get from point A to point Z, and you're prepared for all the potential roadblocks,
Mhm.
then you're going to have a more successful experience.
And to law firm leaders, this is where you can really leverage your experienced business professionals. If you have hired professionals in any department from any other firm, it is likely that they have handled something like this in the past. This is where you can leverage the challenges and the roadblocks they ran into, and also the successes, the strategies and the tactics that led to successes and wins throughout the process. So I implore you to make sure you know the backgrounds of the team members that you have available, because I am certain that you can build a strong internal team that can help you navigate this in a way that will be less stressful for everyone involved.
I agree.
So, Gina, rule number 4 is your team and your clients come first. And as we mentioned earlier, your clients should never learn about your merger through the press.
And Jen, it's goes without saying, but we have to say it anyway, that coordinated internal communications plan time has to be timed precisely with the public announcement. So sometimes an announcement of an M&A happens at 8:30 a.m. and then at 8:45 a.m. an announcement goes out to the press. Or we've scheduled an embargo under verbal and written agreement with the press so that they've done interviews in advance, and then the story can't go live until after the internal announcement. So those are really important. Relationship partners should be prepared with scripts and materials that they can emphasize continuity and the new value, as you will, to their clients. And it's always, I like to think about that age-old question, what's in it for me? The with them. People don't ask, oh, is this good for you? They'll say, well, what about us? How does this affect us? And that the first people that are going to say that are the employees, right? The staff and the associates. The next people who are going to say that are the clients. And then the referral sources are going to ask the same question. So having those scripts ready and educating people on who can and cannot share that script is important. If somebody, I talk to the people who answer the phone, the receptionists, as you will, all the time. And especially with our clients, we have long-standing relationships with them. Are they allowed to talk about it, or do they have to refer it to someone else internally? Have they been trained on that? These are important things because they're often the law firm's front line. That same applies for referral sources, vendors, industry partners. So, and that's why we use something like an embargoed notification, and we synchronize the timeline to prevent mixed messages. So when the clients feel informed and prioritized, their trust is reinforced, and you've also strengthened your relationships with the media.
And to go back to your point about education and training, this is not just specific to M&A communications.
No.
We say this in every episode. You cannot, as a law firm leader, you cannot assume that the receptionist knows who he, she, they should be referring questions to. You have to set expectations and give them the opportunity to succeed. And do that ahead of time. Don't wait until something happens and then you're backtracking. Include everyone in the process. Again, this is where really experienced counsel can make a difference, whether it's your in-house CMBDO and comms team, or in many cases, you know, for us, we are pulled in as outside public relations agency partners, communication strategists, in some instances, crisis communications, although we never want it to get to that point when there's an M&A involved.
Right.
But you know, lean on your experienced team members, whether it's internally or your strategic partners, to really help you, again, navigate what is a pretty complex transaction for your firm.
Well, you know, Jennifer, that brings up another really good point in that all the parties involved in the M&A or combination should be part of that conversation. So for example, oftentimes we will work with the consulting firm that is bringing the merger to the table, like a Law Vision. So we'll be having that conversation with them and with our client, and then with the party that's now being brought into the mix, the merger or acquisition, the combination party. So it's a full conversation with varying perspectives, which is so important. And that skilled team brings experience, perspective, message discipline, and intense and detailed coordination. We also bring those strong media relationships that sometimes firms don't maintain internally. So it helps to frame the story around the client value and the long-term vision, which sets the new foundation for future success. And so that's really, that's the part that I enjoy. You know, go ahead, sorry.
No, please go. You had a thought.
I was just going to say that if a listener hasn't listened to our most recent episode with Sarah Larson, she explains the strategic role about written content, how we use news wires, why they matter, now how they play into communicating correct and compelling information to the machine readers, as you will, to the AI. So it's not just the human readers anymore. It's like, I feel like I've walked into the twilight zone. Um,
I'm
so there's just so much to be aware of.
I'm glad you brought up the episode with Sarah because as you were talking about WIFM, what's in it for me from the client's perspective, I was thinking that those exact questions could actually build out a press release that would go on the newswire. I'm glad you're shaking your head because you're the expert in that area. But I was thinking about Sarah saying, answer the questions that people may search for that your newswire, that your press release on the newswire can answer. Geography, head count, size, all the things that benefit, disciplines, the things that benefit the client. So I guess to summarize our conversation, law firm mergers and acquisitions really demand the same discipline that any high stakes transaction would. It really comes down to preparation, coordination, timing, and maintaining your confidentiality and aligning your teams can really position you for success. And your communications throughout this process could really set your new firm ahead and become a strategic advantage for you.
And Jen, I also want to throw in, this isn't just about law firms. This is about the clients of law firms and the lawyers who are guiding them on their M&A strategies. So it's not just, I mean, this is happening in every industry. We're seeing it in the accounting industry. We're seeing it in the banking industry. So we're seeing it all over the board. We often see it in the healthcare and pharmaceutical industries. So it's really important that this doesn't just sound like a business of law conversation. Knowing this information is going to also help the lawyers who handle M&A deals for their clients.
Yes, that's a great point. Well, thank you to our listeners. If On Record PR is one of the ways you stay informed, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Share the show or your favorite episode with your friends and colleagues. You can always reach out to us at podcasts@OnRecordPR. We really appreciate your feedback, your thoughts, your topic ideas. And join us for our next episode where Gina and I will discuss the state of the legal industry. At that point, we will be 6 weeks into 2026, which is hard to believe. And we will discuss the role of RFPs in today's business development efforts, AI as a differentiator, and change management within your firm. Gina, thank you so much.
Jen, thank you. You do such a great job, and I just love working with you.
Thank
so I
you.
appreciate it. Have a great day.
Bye.
On Record PR is produced by Jennifer Simpson Carr and Matt Henderson, with support from the team at Rubel Communications. This episode is edited by Isabel Horan and Christian Yamula. Visit www.onrecordpr.com for resources and more information.